Welcome back to an analytical view of Moon Knight episode 5 today, and we're going to be using it to discuss the topic of low light filmmaking, because there's a scene about halfway through almost in this episode where it's done at nighttime outside. And I want to cover this because I remember when I first started, I had a little micro four thirds camera and all my footage was constantly grainy and not very good looking, and I thought, you know what? I need to get an A7S Mark II so that I have great low light performance and then my videos will look awesome. And guess what? I got that camera and my videos still didn't look that great. They weren't grainy anymore because it does have good low light capabilities, but lighting is a huge aspect of that. We're going to take a look at this scene here, and I'm just going to pause as we go and talk about stuff. So starting out right here, we have moonlit, right? So we have a natural source of light, so it makes sense that there's light on the characters. It's coming from their right or the left side of the screen.
Couldn't live with that. Is that Doctor and Foley? Layla's dad?
As I've talked about before, having a single source of light gives you that nice contrasty look. Like right now I have a light set up right over here and this side of my face is lit and this side is more dark, and it makes it look more interesting instead of my whole face being one single color. And here you see he's got, now that he's turned kind of away from the light some, we see he's lit up here, but it also along the back, and that helps you stand out from the background as well.
Tried to get them all away.
Same with the character on the ground. The light's coming from one side, and we're on the dark side of him, as we talked about before in the other video. So this half is lit, and that gives contrast and shadows all over, and it makes it look more interesting rather than, consider an overhead light where everything's washed out in the same. Then it's just kind of boring to look at.
What happened to you?
So to take a quick look at this, got this all backlit and then makes this dark here, but there's also moonlight coming through the top of it, so that's letting light come out of here. You got this fire that just adds a little different color and makes things interesting, but as we get closer, you're going to see why that light coming through the top is important. So Mark and... I just watched this whole thing. I wanted to say Simon, but that's the dude's name from American Idol. Steven, Dr. Steven Grant. So we've got Mark and Steven walking up, and this is a memory, and Mark is showing what happened to him that night. So he's crawling up towards that statue. Now you see how the light's coming through the ceiling, so it's lighting this up, so we see part of that makes sense. And then we have these spots here, and he's crawling towards that light spot. So even though it's a dark, low light scene, we have light sources, and the subject is going to where that light source is so that he is lit properly. Notice how he's leaning back here. So rather than just sitting up there with the light coming overhead, and here I'll show you how it would look real quick. You get the old raccoon eyes look. So the light over top like this, that's not a very flattering look. Your eyes are really dark, unless you're going for some kind of like The Godfather or some creepy boss type of dude or something. That's not very flattering. Like he's laying back like this now, so you get that same contrast on one side of the face and makes stuff look good. Right now I'm bouncing the light off the wall so that it lights me well. And he's hurt too, so that's a reason for him to be laying back, but that's just making the light work. So low light doesn't necessarily mean it's pitch black and your camera can see in the dark and hardly have any grain. It's more so, it's an overall dark scene, but you're still lighting stuff properly. Like right now, I'm at ISO 640 and I'm exposed nicely right here, but if I wanted to turn this into a lower light scene, let's crank the ISO down. Now we're at 125 and this footage is still clean and I'm lit compared to the background. The light source is coming from one side, so you've got light here with shadows on the other side, still looking interesting, but you can make it, I could turn that light off behind me Now, see, that just takes away a lot of it. I would have some kind of light source back there still if I was using this for an actual scene, but something that's not quite as bright. But that just goes to show you light it how you need to have your ISO still really low so your stuff looks good. And then you won't have a grainy scene and it'll still look good in low light.
Huh?
I feel the pain inside of you.
So he's looking up at it, and then the camera turns, Dutch angle. The whole Dutch angle gives you kind of an uneasy feeling. It's like, wait, what's going on? Because he probably didn't believe that there was any kind of Egyptian god, real type of thing, and now one's talking to him, so things are kind of changing.
My final word against the evildoers, to bind your very being to me and eradicate.
See right here, we had that light source coming down from the top, so it would bounce on him a little bit here, so he would be lit. You see he's not as well lit as the other version of him that we've been watching, but we also have another light that's a hair light here, which doesn't make sense with how the lighting setup was, but this goes to show you can still have light set up to make your subject look good. It doesn't always have to be motivated, but those little tweaks like this helps him stand out from the darker background behind him.
This time, in exchange.
This is interesting too here. So we see that light setup. We've got these beams of light, one to light him up, one to light him up, and then just these other ones which kind of reflect onto other stuff in the area, so it's not really dark. Just like I was saying, you know, put on another light so it's not just a really dark background behind me like that, and then it makes it look really dark here because that light does reflect around the whole room. But looking here, you know, he's lit. There's something coming from behind him a little bit to light him up. But what I wanted to point out was this here, because there's no light sources over here, but there's something shining from this direction because we have light on this side, a little bit right here on the top of the head. Because if you didn't, this would just be dark and you wouldn't really notice it, but it's something I want to notice because it's a theme part of this video and there's some light on it, so it makes it noticeable and prominent in the scene. So have motivated lighting and something that makes sense, but adding little tweaks to other things isn't going to hurt your scene.
And bring my vengeance to those who would.
That's kind of interesting. I was thinking before, why are there three? You know, these help bounce a little more light, but, you know, there's three versions of him, so one ray of light for each of them maybe? I don't know. That could be a storytelling aspect of it. Or maybe I'm just reading too much into it.
That snaky old vulture. He was going to play you from the start.
See right here, once again, he has light coming from this side of him, which would be outside of that area, but the moonlight is coming from the opposite side down in there. So it doesn't quite make sense, but it just helps make it look better. He has the main overall light right here, and then a little bit on this side of his face and his back as well.
Then rise and live again.
And then he turns into the Moon Knight for the first time.
As my Moon Knight.
And lighting's not as big a deal here because now he's in this white suit and stands out a lot already from this, and since it's CGI they can make the suit look as bright as they need, but there's a little bit of light still coming down the top and over the shoulders there. So that's the overall just look at some low light filmmaking. Just once again, remember, low light doesn't mean you need to be able to shoot in the dark and not have grainy footage. It just means that you're shooting in an environment that's darker and you still want to set up lights if you can. The main reason that I do like having a full frame camera like the A7S III or like I have the FX3 now is because when I do shoot live events or something like a wedding and you can't control those factors and it's just go the whole time, you want to get the best quality you can, even if it is not that great out. Like I shot at 20,000 ISO before outside at night during a wedding when there wasn't great lighting and I was still able to use the footage. So those type of things, yeah, it's good to be able to have that capability. But if you're doing some kind of planned shoot, you don't need that. Lighting is one of the most simple ways to make your stuff look cinematic. Hope this was helpful. Leave any comments with questions or anything like that below, and I will see you in the next one.